Just tell me when you
Yeah,
live and all.
we're live right now. We don't have any viewers yet, but if you want to go on and share it.
Do it.
Starting to get some people trickle in here. Give us just a minute. We had some technical difficulties. Darren, did it make you sign into an account or anything when you did that?
It wanted me to. It was like I had to fiddle my way through it because.
Okay, yeah, I figured out what it is now because it was doing it to Ralph last week. There's one button or box I have to check that I didn't know about. Good evening, Brody. So we'll get started here in just a minute. Yeah. Darren, Joe Tenney says you're coming in strong with the background.
I'm coming against strong against the background.
No, he's saying you're coming in strong with the background. Your background's game is strong, is what he's saying.
Oh, my back. Thank you.
Yeah, so for those of you just joining in, I'm Kenny Mullins. We got Darren Miner as a guest tonight, and Ralph Bennett as usual. He's trying to share it around so people can see what's going on. So, Darren, you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Darren Miner, Maryland. I hear that.
Hold on a second. Sorry about that.
Ready?
Yep.
Having all kinds of technical issues.
All right, we can try it again.
Ready?
Yep.
Oh, my name is Darren Miner, and I'm from Maryland. And a lot of people know me as the guy who sells shoes, scent shoes, but I also track. I've been tracking this our fifth season with me and my dog Fritz. We've recovered we've actually been on about 250 live tracks, 260 live tracks. Recovered about a little more than half. We're an on-lead tracker. We run about 53%. I track in Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Northern Virginia throughout the season. So I do have a real job, but this takes a lot of my time. And this will be our fifth season with me and my dog. I do have another dog. He's not ready to turn out to the public yet. I think that's about it for now.
Yeah, and I got the pleasure of watching your dog on or I should say, judging your dog with Joe on the ABTA started test, and I did get to watch that YouTube video and where that fawn got up in front of him. And when Joe and I, when we were laying that line, we jumped that fawn up, and I told Joe, I said, when we come back and run, it's going to be in that exact spot. He said, you think so? I said, yep. And sure enough, it was, and he didn't even pay attention to it.
Yeah, I was a little worried. I'm like, uh-oh. I'm glad that he didn't see it. Usually he takes after him, but if you watch the video, he goes nose to nose with that fawn.
Right.
And he just kind of disregards it. I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, the track wasn't that old for him, and if he was more enticed by the track, luckily he was. I mean, if it had been a big old buck or a big old doe, he'd have been jerking, the lead right out of my arm. But he disregarded that fawn and continued on and finished up in no time.
Yeah, that was a pretty strong run. Other than Joe hanging the hide a little too high for the short-legged dogs.
Yeah, he did go right by it, and I'm like, I had seen it, and by that time he was nose down, um, looking for the deer. I think he tried it once in here. Now I hear him knocking at the door.
Hey, we have to
Yeah.
talk to Joe stereotyping these little dogs like that.
Little dog with a big attitude.
It's rigged.
Randy Vick just tuned in. Hey, Randy. Yeah. So, when's your season open up?
Our season opens September 6th.
Dang, a week before us.
Yeah, they changed it a few years back. It used to be mid-September here in Maryland, but now it's always the first Friday after the Labor Day. So it's kind of a floating thing. You know, it could be later one year, earlier the next year, but it's the 6th this year, which is pretty early for us. Get a chance at a nice velvet buck.
Yep.
At least it'd be nice and cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll be moderate. Sure, I'll be sweating somewhere.
Yeah. For those of you who doesn't know, it's a running joke. We were up there in Clearfield, PA, at that event, and us Southerners were wearing hoodies, and we felt either cold or at least comfortable when even at the peak of the day, and everyone up there was complaining it was hot.
It got warm.
Yeah, it made it to the mid 70s. Yeah.
We wouldn't know what to do. Tracking in that weather. Whew.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Yeah, it's daggone even end of October, it's still pretty dang hot.
Yeah, so Darren, you want to talk about the shoes a little bit?
Sure. I'll talk about anything you would like me to. But yeah, getting back to it, I sell the Cinch shoes. In fact, I have them right here.
Sure. Yeah.
Here they are. See the name on the side. So
Yep.
These are Cal Cinch shoes that I import from Germany. And I've been selling them about 3 years now. Saw that when I got into tracking, of course, I started with the sticks, like most everybody does, and thought that there had to be a better way. And well, there is a better way, arguably, with the shoes. And I got my first pair, Michael Geidel from North Carolina, was the conduit to get the shoes from German. If anybody knows him, they know he's German and still has family there. And he would get small amounts at a time for people. And as I got into tracking, I became a member of just about every tracking group or every state group on Facebook, and always saw a need. People were always asking about them. Where can I get shoes? Where can I get shoes? Well, there's always a wait. It was 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks before you could even get them. And then some of the places, or most of the places in Germany, they don't do PayPal. They don't do credit card. You have to do a money transfer, which added on to the expense of the shoes. So, the wheels got turning. There's got to be a better way. And I contacted the company, was able to enter into a contract with them to distribute them for the U.S. And it's been gangbusters ever since. Somebody calls me today, they'll go into mail tomorrow, and they'll have them in 4 or 5 days. Perfectly streamlined the process. The company honors the shoes. We have had a few issues with them. They're not perfect. And the warranty is basically no questions asked. If you have an issue, I am always available. Anybody that's got a hold of me or my phone dings, I'm pretty much on it.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I mean, I was shocked whenever I contacted you to order a new pair, and it had been, I don't know, 6 or 7 months, and we had one spot tear, and you said, "Well, they're not a year old, so they're under warranty." I said, "Oh," I said, "You know, as much as we used them, we probably had 500 trails on them by then." I said, "No, don't worry about it." You said, "No, I'm sending you a pair." So I can attest to that warranty.
Yeah, they're really good. They have never given me an issue. I like to see what went wrong with them if something does go wrong, so I can pass it on to the company. Which the company, when I say Ma and Pa, it's Ma and Pa. The gentleman from Germany, he's who invented them, is very elderly now, and his daughter pretty much runs the operations, and she's a one man band, so to speak.
Do you have to send the shoes back?
She's been great. If I ordered a box today, they go into it depends. Usually I can get them in about 10 days to 3 weeks. I have them. I always try to keep them. You know, I don't like to keep a lot on hand. And if you guys are listening with tracking season coming up, it's going to be, get them now if you want them. Have them now. Give me a call. I'm easy to get a hold of, and we'll get you hooked up with some shoes.
Yeah, and they're definitely my favorite. I've tried several different types, and those are by far the most comfortable.
No question.
Oh yeah, I had just for the, I have 2 dogs. But I mean, even for yourself, the professional trainers, they like them. And just for the average guy, my original pair, which I still would have, which would be 3 years old and probably 300 to 350 training tracks on them, they were still going. I could still have a lot of life left in them. So, if you want a pair, get a hold of me now. Actually, I'm going on vacation soon, the 13th. So from the 13th through the 26th of August, nothing's moving. I'm going to be out of the country. So give me a call now. I have them now. I always have them, but the sooner the better. It just makes it easier for me when my phone's ringing 15 times a day for tracks. I don't got to worry about so much about shoes. Last year, I sold a pair of shoes to a fella from, I think it was Oklahoma. Well, he put them on TikTok, and this is October, and we're well into the season, and he got 1 million views on just doing a demo with the shoes. And I'm like, man, I don't need this right now. I'm trying to work my regular job, do tracking, and then the shoe orders just start flying in. And I'm like, it's good. Don't get me wrong. It's a good problem to have, but get them now.
Yeah. So I had a question come in. Says, do you think they put more scent down than other style shoes with the bone end exposed?
With
the bone exposed?
Oh, well, I've never used other shoes. The only other thing I've used is sticks. I guess that would be a more question for maybe yourself, Kenny, who's been doing.
So I have experimented with many types of shoes. I've had the kind that you can get off the UBT site where they bolt in the back. I've used the Ray Houlihan shoes. I've used, or what are they, buck braids. I've used. I've tested on with some people that's used the German wooden shoes, and I'm just going to say that I really didn't notice much of a difference. I mean, we use your shoes pretty much daily. Well, we do use them daily, and we still mix in sticks from time to time, and different other tactics. But I've never seen a dog not pass because of the type of shoes used. And when we're training with your shoes and we go to Georgia and the judge lays lines with wooden shoes, the dog still tracks the same way it did. So I've heard mixed things about the dogs will track the rubber, there's more bone exposed. I haven't noticed enough of a difference to be concerned.
I would say just do your research. There's a couple other brands out there. Do your research, talk to people, and get buy what's right for you.
I don't think you can beat the comfort, though.
Right. I agree.
They are, they are pretty comfortable. Once you get used to them, a little bit of a learning curve, of course, but once you get used to them, you don't even notice it. I don't. I mean, I've tracks myself, but
I wish we'd have got it on video. You talk about a learning curve. We had a judge's workshop, and Kayla Tire put the shoes on for the first time, and I don't even know how to describe it. What would you say, Ralph? We thought she was joking around, and she was like literally trying to walk in the shoes, and she looked like I don't even know what to say. Like an ostrich trying to walk down like a runway model.
Yeah, except it was hilarious. We couldn't get our phones out quick enough to start video, and then she stopped. But we have made fun of her.
You would think she would get used to it, being a lady and wearing high heels. Is kind of what I liken it to. I would suggest that you wear, for me in particular, I like to wear a boot or a hiking boot, something with good ankle support. The muck boots or the rubber boots, they don't give me personally enough support.
And that's one thing I learned when we were in Pennsylvania. Using them daily here, I could go out there and my short ankle fishing boots. But when we were up there in those mountains, ankle support was key.
Yeah.
And since then, I come back and now I put on taller boots with lace up boots with better ankle support, and it really helps.
Yeah. I especially if you're just starting out with them, you want to be cognizant of the ankle support, because just kind of think of it like high heels a little bit, not too bad, but you can roll a little bit, but it's a learning curve. You just got to get used to it. Once you do it, you can run in them.
Speaking of high heels, that's what I felt like wearing the ones from the UBT site. If you ever get a chance to try those, they really feel like high heels, because the hoof bolts in the back and sticks down.
Right.
And the problem I found with those, and some people may love them, like you said, try them all out, but problem I found with those, one, it's super awkward walking in them with the way the hoof's in the back. But number two is they seem to catch every vine you come across. And I would end up flat on my face.
Right.
I'd rather have a little ankle roll and wear some better ankle support. Plus, they're light. They're, Paul.
These and you're set. And some people can wear the muck boots or the rubber boots or whatnot, and they're just fine. Not me. I can't do it.
Yeah, Paul says his boots hang over 2 inches on the front, but he still uses them daily.
Yeah, that's a. I always offer the company suggestions, and that was one thing that it's not going to happen. That they would make a bigger shoe, as I like to say, for the Sasquatch, 12 and up. And I always, everybody.
Did you just call Paul a Sasquatch?
Sasquatch, you got big feet. But I had requested that they make them a little longer and just a little bit wider, but it would necessitate new molds. And
Yeah.
they said it wasn't cost effective. I said, yeah, it is, because I sell a whole lot to, people that have a size 12 and up. And they just will not do it. Now, I always ask, they're on my website and everybody knows where to get them, or most everybody, how to contact me through the various Facebook groups and whatever. And if someone's a bigger size foot or boot, I always send them a picture of what that size boot looks like in the shoe. I want them to know what they're getting, what to expect. That's why I'm kind of old fashioned. I like to talk to people and, let them make the decision. And I never had anybody with a 12 or, I think the biggest 12 or up really complain, or at least give me feedback. I sold to a fella with a 14. I never heard anything back from him. Sold to a guy with an 11 triple E. And he just bought another pair. A guy from Illinois. So, sorry, they make one size fits all. Now, I will say, for the people with the smaller feet, you're in better luck, or the ladies, because they do make an insert, a heel insert that you can put. It's just a piece of foam. You can adhere or not, and that will take up space to allow your foot to go forward. That's for people with smaller feet. So that's the good news.
Now, Tommy brought up something, said reinforcing where the strap goes through by the heel is needed.
Yes.
Could put a piece of metal in the mold. Yes,
I addressed that, and no, if the stars would align and I would have more input to it, yes, that would definitely be something I would improve upon. I've never done that. I guess it's different with everybody. That's one of our big warranty claims. But like I said, I had over 300 tracks on mine over almost 4 years. Never ripped. Never.
Ripped. And we were at just over 500 before ours ripped. And I will add, the biggest issue, it seems to be when people try to over tighten them, and that's when it pulls through. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah. I guess don't ratchet down on it too. Just snug them up. I mean, that's all you need. Just snug them up. I don't know how. I mean, I don't know how guys are doing it. Not saying they're not. I mean, I've warrantied a few pair like that, of course, but I don't know. And I brought it up to him, and I'm like, look, can we put perhaps some type of washer, or I suggested earlier, a little metal piece over that slot to give it strength. And no, not in the future.
And for me, I don't think it's me. This is me personally. I don't see it as that big of an issue if I could get over 500 tracks on them before it's
going to take the average person to do 500 tracks. I mean,
right.
A lot. Years.
If they ever get to that.
If they get to that, right. If they get to that. Now, even mine, they were showing a little wear, but they were still very much usable. I don't know if I said it, but I actually sold them to a guy, I think, in Texas. He wanted a different brand, but he wanted something. All right, here you go. I'll send them to you. And I assume that they're going.
Well, we got Ethan Young just hopped on. Let's bring him up. Hey, Ethan, how you doing?
Doing good. How are y'all?
Doing good.
I'm good.
We were just talking about Darren's tracking shoes, so we'll let him finish up real quick, and then we'll talk to you a little bit, and we'll all just converse and answer questions.
I love it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, There are some improvements or modifications that need to be made by the company. But again, if anybody has any issue, and you know Kenny, and there's some other people listening, I'm easy to get a hold of. Actually, somebody texted me while we're doing this, and I'll get to them when we're finished up here. I didn't get a chance to read the message, but we'll take care of you.
Yeah. So Tommy says, my heel steps on it and folds it in. I have to put it forward and slide my boot back into the heel. It isn't a deal breaker. I mean, sounds like you figured out how you're supposed to put them on, Tommy. I give Tommy a hard time all the time, but that is the thing too. I mean, if you're not paying attention, you don't put your heel forward and slide it back. You will step on them and fold it over.
Yes. Yeah. You have to go in and come back, and then tighten them up. But don't, like you said, Kenny, don't over tighten them. And a couple other things why I got them here. Don't over tighten these. Don't over bolts right here. If you do, you'll strip the nut. You'll strip the nut in there. I tell everybody this who buys a pair of this bar, keep this bar straight. If you gotta lay it down on the ground or whatever and tap it with a hammer, it's real easy to do. Keep this straight, because if you don't keep this straight, when you screw it in, you're gonna bend this end, and then you're gonna torque this nut again, and it's going to start to pull on it, and it's going to pull out. So it's important to keep. It's going to flex a little bit. It's aluminum. I could bend it now. It's going to flex a little bit, and that's fine. No big deal. But when they really start getting contorted on the ends here, in particular, you want to straighten them out. And I do have extra these. If someone can't figure it out, I have a lot of these, and these tabs here in the front, the front strap holding bracket. I have these too. I'll send them to you for free. It won't cost you 2 cents. I have a bunch of these because sometimes not many people have done it. You have to flex these out because, like I said earlier, I wish they made them a little wider. And they said it's perfectly okay to flex these out. Even with my little size 9, I got to flex them out a little bit. If you snap it off or if it breaks, I'll send you a new one free. Nothing. Cost you nothing. So.
Yeah, you can't beat customer service like that.
Yep. And down here with our deer are so little, those sponges, some people just throw them away thinking it's just a filler. That is crucial for the small deer.
Good point, Ralph. Good point. Or your hogs, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Lay a track for a hog or mess with hog hoofs.
Yeah, we do it. We have people bring us dogs they want to track hogs. We just trained a poodle to track hogs.
Right. If you have giant hooves, you don't need this.
Right.
But I put it to the side. If you've got small hooves, if it's all you've got, or if it's a yearling or a small doe or something, whatever, you want to use this. It fills up the space, it compresses, and it helps hold the hoof in place.
Yeah.
And I know some people, we could go on, but some people have cut them. You want to just fill the recess, right? You just want to fill the recess with the hoof. You don't want to come way out. I've seen some people come way, and if you do, hey, whatever floats your boat. But you should just be filling the recess with the hoof.
Right. And one thing to mention, you talked about that bar on the bottom getting bent and possibly pulling that nut out. What another thing that will pull the nut out is if you have too large of hooves and you keep that padding in there, that spacer in there.
Yeah, too tight.
Yep.
Too much torque. It's too tight, folks. You're putting too much torque. That's why I said if you got a big buck hoof or big deer hoof, don't need it. You just need good hoof to ground contact, and you don't want to over tighten it. Like Kenny said, you got a big old hoof and you try to put it in there and crank that thing down. which I always tell anybody who's bought a pair off me, I say, do not gorilla tighten them down. And you try to crank that thing down, it's too much torque, way too much torque on this nut. And it's going to start to back out.
You know, one thing Paul mentioned this, and I want to bring this up. He said Darren has donated many pairs of shoes to many events, and we can attest to that. You've been good, to us and many others like Paul and the Alabama event and all the events you donated some for us, and we appreciate that.
Well, thank you. It's usually, I don't advertise it much, but if somebody asks, I've sent them to Florida. I've sent them to Alabama a few times, Missouri, even a I think a DD group, Wisconsin or Michigan, a guy out to me, and it's part of their training or certification, blood trailing. He said, "Hey, can I get a pair for our?" Yes, here you go, no charge, free. So yeah, do donate several pair a year to help out the various groups around the country.
All right, so there's a couple more questions in here that's not really shoe specific. So I want to bring Ethan on. Ethan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Is my audio okay?
Yes.
I gotcha. Well, I got started into dogs growing up. We bred and hunted beagles. We used them and some walker dogs to chase deer across big old hunks of land down here. And to us, it was just kind of normal. These dogs would trail the healthy deer. So every time we had an issue with a deer that we couldn't find, we would just grab one of our better beagles and toss it on it, and it would find it. That was about as much training as we did, but we did that for years, and I didn't realize how big the demand for something like that was until I started doing it for the general public. And probably about 4 years ago, I got a dog dedicated for it and started training him, and just took a few calls for the general public just to try and get my dog some experience selfishly in case I ever needed him. I wanted him to have seen some tracks, and then I kind of got hooked after the first couple of finds out there, and been doing it for hard 3 years and really hard last year, but we had an injury with my dog and got our season cut short. But that bug has bit me, and I train dogs now, and I'm just kind of hooping and hollering down here in South Arkansas, all about some trailing dogs.
Yeah, cool.
What breeds do you run?
So I have a Lacey dog. I started a German short hair last year. He was kind of a rehome from someone that was expecting him to be like a lazy old Mastiff dog, and he was kind of cracked out energy. And so he's been a bit of a project, but we got him off the bench basically when my Lacey dog got injured, and I took him out on 7 or 8 tracks, and we found 5 of them. But I mean, I was kind of curating. I was making sure I wasn't putting him on any really unknowns right off the bat. I'm having to run him on lead, which I started my Lacey dog on lead, but I'm having to keep the German Shorthair on lead because his just, I guess, prey drive and wanting to hunt with sight and wind stuff is just so high that I think trailing's just a low arousal activity for him, at least so far, until he probably gets a hold of maybe some live deer or something. But those are the two
Yeah.
I've tracked with so far. I've got a couple of rehome and trains that I'm going to be running this year. One's a dogo and one's just a mutt. We actually got an embark test for him, so we'll find out in a few weeks what he is. But he just looks like a mutt to me. I don't know, but I'm excited to get them all out there this year.
So we got a question come in for you. I don't know if you can see it, but it says, do you find yourself having to restart the short hair on lead very often?
No, but I hold on to the lead line, and sometimes I can see when his like ADD gets the best of him, and he just wants to just go for a stroll, and he'll hit the end of the line and just kind of shock him back into focus. I don't really like correct him or anything or restart him. I don't find having to restart dogs very often, but he is definitely, he needs a little love along the trail to stay focused, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've trained a lot of them over the years. We've got one here now that's pretty good. Overall, it wouldn't be my choice of a breed for me personally. You know, they're just
Yeah, their tendencies for how they hunt definitely seems like kind of paddling upstream. We've had two come through here that weren't mine. Both were really solid. One was superb at it. Off lead, on lead, he was just smoking trails and doing it fast and accurate. It was kind of wild to see. I did have to do some slowing down on him just so like for handler safety, if he ever had to be on lead, he wasn't just getting ripped through the vines or anything. But both that I've had this year were pretty good at it. One exceptional.
So
So
do y'all have to be on lead, or that's just your choice with that dog?
So when I'm training them, I do it on lead. We don't in Arkansas. We don't have to be on lead. In Louisiana, which I'm just a few minutes north of Louisiana, so they did until this past year have on lead law. Culturally, not a lot of folks abided by it, but I did. The activity's too fun to me to go risking my ability to do it. But we've done some rundowns on lead. I don't recommend it. It's kind of wild, but this year Louisiana is letting folks run off lead and from what I can tell, dispatch as well. So I'm kind of excited for that. I may go to Louisiana more this year.
well, it definitely ups the success rate.
100%. Yeah, I
So
realized when I. Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead. Go
I was
ahead.
gonna say when I did about 2 seasons on lead with my Lacey. I got that. I never formally trained. We had just like we were pretty redneck. We just get a beagle and toss it out there, and if it didn't go get it, we just go get another one until until we got kind of our track pack, if you will, the ones that would trail. So when I got this Lacey and wanted to get serious about it, I got the John Giannini book, and I started basically with that. But y'all will cringe, but I used the dog bone hunter kit just because I started before I had hooves or anything, and we did fine with that. But I did everything on lead for a couple of years with him, and
Did fine with that.
what's that?
Define you did fine with that compared to what you know now in your tactics now.
Well, yeah. So I mean, now I would definitely. I think there's a lot of value in training now. With hooves, just so you can see, like it makes a pile of scent just dragging anything. I'm assuming they probably key in a lot more disturbed earth and vegetation with any kind of drag. I use just a little dab of that scent, but really what I was going for, and I still think is probably fine, is like, what does their tracking behavior look like, and how do you get them task clarity before you start throwing them on a bunch of real tracks? But that's kind of my background from just getting dogs out of the truck and throwing them on a track, and that's how we started, seasoned, and finished them growing up. So that was my experience. But this year I've been doing a lot with the hooves. I definitely they track a lot more slow starting out. I don't do any drags hardly unless they just are totally clueless when I set them in front of it. But they definitely track slower and more methodical, at least than my Lacey did with the dog bone hunter kit. But
Well,
what I was gonna
you know
say,
what that's telling you, right?
so yeah, just my assumption is the odor being left down is, well, one, we don't, I guess we don't know what the scent is, but the trail, just like the volume to their nose, is way bigger on any kind of drag from my experience. And
Right.
you gotta either age it just a ton to slow them down, or they just rip through it. It's a good time to them, it looks like.
Yes, it's too easy.
Yeah.
Yep. So that brings up this other question, although it's not dog bone. Brian asked, anyone putting tracker ID sponge on them? And I know that came in talking about with the shoes. I personally don't. I have over 700 hooves in my freezers and I think 10 gallons of blood. So I have no use for tracker ID. I'm not putting it down by saying I have no use. I just have all the product I need and then some. But we also give some away daily. So, and I think you would agree, those products are for the people that just doesn't have anything else, or that's what they should be used for. Is if you don't have anything, there are alternatives out there. I mean, I typically recommend beef liver. I mean, there's been a lot of dogs start on beef blood, beef liver. Over the years, I would rather use something natural. And with all these state Facebook groups and tracking groups out there, it's just too easy to reach out to someone and get some help.
Yeah, my one dog starting to come on is I think you know there, Kenny, a little bit, and I out of blood, 100% out of blood, because my dog Fritz, he don't need blood. We never train with blood. Blood is icing on the cake for him. I make it hard. The other one, I have to make it easy. 2 days in a row, I picked up roadkill and got a bottle, 16 ounces of blood out of 2 roadkill. It wasn't fun, but I was in a pinch. So, yeah.
Yeah. And so Vicky brought a good point, and Richard, I'll get back to yours in just a second. She said, blood is blood, iron, and that's the thing about blood that people doesn't realize. There's not a lot of sin in blood. You have to look at blood as blood is like a cotton ball. It's a super absorbent. As it exits that body, it makes contact with that hide, and it's just absorbing all the odors in it. And that's the thing about blood. I don't use blood in our training. We will from time to time, and I know, like Paul said, they experienced a dog when it came across blood, it wanted to roll around in it or, lick it or whatever. And, I've seen it too, but it's not an important enough for me to deal with blood every day. The only reason I have blood in the freezer is for testing purposes. As far as training, I don't see any benefit.
Catch that one, Mike Payton right there.
But yeah, I'm going to get to that one in just a second. There's one I don't want to get lost that was directed at Ethan. Richard Womack says, do you think that dog bone stunted your dog? How is he doing now? Did it transfer to the real thing?
I just started putting him on deer. I never. So I don't know. I don't think so. We came out of the gate. I did a little bit of screening and making sure I got him on some high success rates, but he just took to it like a pig in mud. And the only other things I think he's learned have just been maybe different scent conditions or different, maybe like hunter vegetation disturbance and other situations that come from field experience. But it got me what I wanted. I mean, we were operating at a pretty high level pretty quickly. By the second season, we were sitting at right at 50%, and that's stopping at property lines a couple of times. And letting some go that I bet we could have got. But again, I would probably train with hooves now, knowing what I know, just because he was just like flying through trails the whole time and giving himself a choke on his vest and what have you. I definitely would probably, if I had the dog bone hunter now, I would probably have a better dog using that, knowing what I know now than when I started him back on it then, just from my own handling skills. But
that's a tough question to answer because you don't
is.
know what, I mean, and you can't, it's not like you can replicate it a whole lot because every dog is different. Every
Sure.
dog you train, every puppy out of every litter, every breed, everything, there's no 2 dogs the same.
Yeah, I have 2 dogs, a mom and a daughter here. Sorry for the non-breeding terminology, but they are 2 totally different animals. As far as their interest level, their drive, how methodical they are. But
Yep.
in a lot of other ways, playing fetch, I'll get ready to toss them something and whistle, and they'll both spin around exactly look like clones on TV or something with all their mannerisms and what have you. But take them out in the woods and ask them to find it, and it's just one perceives handler pressure way differently, and they approach it entirely different. One's super jazzy about it, and one's just like, I'll find it. Okay, no biggie.
Yep. Yeah, and that's you can rinse that with the hose from the inside out. Sorry. Gotcha. Sorry, my son's working on his truck and he walking through the house with a soaked K&N filter that he was trying to rinse in the bathtub.
You bunch
yes.
of red.
Yeah. So now we're going to get the mics that you were wanting to bring up, Ralph. Would a hoof of a deer that was shot dead, didn't run, be better than using the dog bone products? So I don't know what's in the dog bone products. I don't think anyone really does. I know what they claim. It has everything on a trail, which, I don't know that. I'm not going to say it does or doesn't. But I will say this. I mean, even a hoof that is roadkill, I feel is a better option because it's more natural. And even though there may not be the declining health pheromone there if it died instantly, you still got your dander, you still got your disturbed earth, your broken vegetation. With, in my opinion, that is there's always disturbed earth and broken vegetation, always. So everyone gets caught up in the interdigital, which I do as well. I mean, because the interdigital is a unique aspect of that trail from anything else, with it being a chemical pheromone, but still it's a total scent profile. And even if you don't have that declining health pheromone, and I want to talk about that because that's the key part of a deer that's shot and ran. It's not the way the interdigital gland works. It's comprised of 46 volatile compounds. That those compounds are used to communicate or give signals of many different things, not just the health status. Health status is just one, and it's in a subcategory of alerts, and there's everything, there's, I think, 4 or 5 subcategories. I have to look at my notes again, but so even if that's not there, you still have your disturbed earth, your broken vegetation. There's probably still some blood on there, and iron, like someone mentioned before, bone. So you still have scent on that trail. So I think it's a good option if you have nothing else. And there has been tests. I know they did it in Missouri where they took a hose from a roadkill deer and hose from one that they know was shot and ran, and they put them out there, and the people couldn't tell the difference. I believe that a dog that is trained to follow a scent trail of a deer, it's picking up all those cues of that total scent profile, so that it may not be as big of a deal once they're trained. And I say this at every seminar I speak at. Can a dog figure out the interdigital on its own? Yes, we know that. But I also think it's key for quicker progression of the dog to make sure you utilize hooves that from a deer that's been shot and ran. But if you don't have them, they work. That's my take. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that.
I've picked up some roadkill quite a few times this year. I use it mostly for like rewards at the end. Like if there's some good hide and legs and what have you, I'll use that as kind of my finds. But I've laid some tracks with them, and I haven't noticed a specific difference. I don't make a habit out of it though. But they're free 99 if you can drive around, and don't have any shame throwing a dead roadkill deer in your truck.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike said he's not a fan of bought products, and like I said, I've personally trained dogs early on when I didn't have any supplies with just beef liver, and they'll hit the ground running that season. But I will say this: what I thought was decent then is a whole different level now. So it does make a difference. Now, the average person may not see that. And, where you take a dog that was just trained on blood or liver drags or hide drags, and will they find deer? Sure. But when you get to the tough situations where dogs really got to figure it out, you better put more training on that dog than just drags. And that's how you get from that 30% recovery rate to that 50, 60, even close to 70% for the off lead trackers. That's going to make the difference is on the tough tracks. It doesn't so much matter on the easier ones. As long as you teach them to follow a trail, they're going to find the easy ones.
Yeah, and I think that was probably something with using those drags early on was I was out in the field still training with my dog and just having to eat it and go. Whereas now I've sent a pile of dogs home now that I feel would track really confidently on just about anything I put them on. And they don't have to be wandering around in thickets like trying to recast their dog or anything.
Right. Yeah, not being out there and just doing a bunch of grid searches with the dog.
Sure.
And I'm not talking about controlled grid searches because we have to do that sometimes. We have to do controlled searches with dogs, but I'm talking about I know you guys have probably seen it or heard stories of a guy just or a woman just going out there and walking around hoping the dog catches wind of the deer. I actually had a guy call me, actually called several of us, and some of them's watching right now. He was very, very highly intoxicated. And he's like, well, I know this deer's contained in this block. I just need you guys to bring dogs and circle the block and just start real wide and get tighter and tighter, and we're going to find that deer. I'm like, that's not how it works. I'm going to pass. And that was, in fact, that was one of those situations where I said, you know what, maybe you should just call a drone.
I send all the people that give me a bad taste in my mouth to drone operators, or and stuff in like really urban areas. I send to drone operators just because I don't want to be out there.
Well, you mentioned that, and Darren, you're a drone operator.
First full year last year.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the urban stuff. That's I feel drones are the way to go in the urban game. Property lines get in the way a lot of dogs for dog and handler trackers.
Yeah, urban can be, but flight restrictions can get you too if you're doing it
right.
properly and legitimately. Like in my area, I'm in Baltimore, DC metro. We can't, a couple counties in Maryland, forget it. Northern Virginia, we can't fly at all. A couple spots here in Maryland, Camp David, no go, can't fly. So
we don't, like in my area, we got one small airport here in my town, but then it's an hour before a big airport, and there's no real military bases right here. So, we have a little more flexibility there.
Right.
But I'm glad you mentioned that because a lot of people doesn't know about the restrictions and,
you have to be, if you want to do it, fine, but do it properly. You have to go through the FAA certification if you want to do it for any kind of compensation, and we do charge. Not hard. It's just, people circumvent the system, and we had a guy here that was doing that. It was circumventing the system, and there's 3 or 4 of us in my area that are Part 107 certified, and he was not. And then he started bashing us. Well, that was a mistake. I did call the FAA field office, and they did follow up and give this guy a call and pretty much say knock it off, and I was fine with that. Because it's not hard, but there's stuff you need to know.
So Darren, go ahead, Kenny.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask from a tactic standpoint, or to educate some of us handlers, like what are the times that you roll up to a track and you might reach for your drone prior to getting your dog out of the box or out of your truck?
I don't, but it's the client's decision.
Oh, okay.
We have both now, and we give them the choice. Now, early season, we don't really recommend it. It has to be cornfield, marsh, swamp. Early season, we typically don't recommend it at all. I get asked, well, what's better? Neither is better, neither. It's what your preference is. Now we do get people who call us straight up right out of their mouth. I want the drone. Okay. We can do it. But again, if it's, you're in September, October, it's just depends on where, the foliage and the environment. If we want to do it, it'd be easy for us just to go do it, but
Sure.
we don't. We say no, it's not conducive to use the drone right now. We'll use the dog.
You know,
And you're saying that because of the foliage, you think?
Yeah, because I was just we got a call last week. A farmer's cattle got out and it went feral apparently, and they shot it and they wanted us to come and find it. So I'm like, okay, it's mostly ag, some woods. We'll give it a shot. But it could have been laying in that heavy cover, and we could have flown right over it. If it had been in the cornfield, 8 foot high, we'd have found it. No doubt in my mind. Open areas, and we were finding deer in some fairly thick stuff in the woods. I forgot what you said, Ralph. But the foliage, yes,
Just about the foliage.
the heavy foliage, we do not recommend. Getting into late October, November, December, it's game on. We'll find every squirrel in the woods.
Does that sleep? Do you have to check out like a lot of heat signatures, or are they pretty easy to identify which one you're looking for?
Once you do, you get used to it. You can see, okay, that's a rabbit. Oh, that's bright and it's pretty big. That looks good. I got a lot of videos on my YouTube channel. Anybody can go look them out.
Okay.
Deer, dogs, and drones. It's all honest. I'm an honest guy, and it is what it is. But yeah, we don't check every single heat signature, because once you do it a bit, you get a feel for what's what, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. Like ours down here, we're middle to late November before the leaves start falling off. I mean, it's tough down here. Foliage, like you're talking.
It's tough, but we also have another pilot who helps us because we're busy, and if we're dog tracking, we'll send him with the drone, or a lot of times he's not a hunter, but he's a very good drone pilot. So we'll go with him and we'll handle all the hunting related stuff, and he flies, which works out really well, actually. Like I said, we found him in cover. It can be done. I think I was reading the other day on Kenny's post, somebody said, don't get brainwashed by the guy. And there's some truth in that. It's not an end all be all.
No, but I will say that I know you see this, Darren, because you have experience with thermal drones. And then I start reading these comments of these people who that they have no real world experience with a thermal drone, but they're talking like they know what they're talking about. And it's very obvious. I choose my battles here anymore, or I try to. Let me rephrase that. Ralph's always getting on to me.
When did that start?
But some of these people, they just really don't have a clue. They're just anti-drone, or I shouldn't say anti-drone. They're just so pro-dog.
Yeah. And you got to have an open mind, and you got to be reasonable and sensible about it. If you call me September 6th and say I want the drone, I'm going to be reluctant. I'm really going to be reluctant, because I want to find your deer. That's the end game for everybody. Should be. Even though we charge a fair amount, that's secondary to finding the deer. I want to make you happy. I want to find your deer. um, the best way that I think that we can find it.
Right. And to me, that's the key. I mean, what is our goal? You know, our goal is to help hunters recover deer, and our goal is to recover the deer. I don't have an issue with any legal means of doing that.
Right. Yeah. I know people get bent out of shape. You know, that it's a toy drone, you know, dog can beat a drone. They're tools, man. You don't hit a nail with a screwdriver, right?
Right.
They have applications. They're useful, and like you just said, at the end of the day, all legal and reasonable means possible to find a deer for the client is what we're trying to do.
So Ralph might hang me for this, but I'm going to let a cat out of the bag. Darren, you know this because you've been helping with this. Joe Tenney, a couple other people. I have been working on a drone deer recovery training course through the ABTA and certification, and I'll tell you why. It's not because we're trying to get away from the dogs or anything like that. And I feel there is a need for this because there's a lot of drone operators out there that doesn't know deer recovery. They don't know how to do a proper hunter interview. And Darren, just like I mentioned to you, I put in there, I was trying to get it to load so I could show it on here, but I couldn't. I put in there to do a thorough hunter interview to analyze the shot site. And you said, well, as a drone operator, we don't look at the shot site. I said, well, you should. And you were like, yeah, I didn't think about it, but you're right. And here's the reason. We go in there, we look at a shot site, and they describe on the phone, well, it's a pretty good shot. We get there an hour, 2 hours later, think we're going to find a dead deer, and we get there and there's gut matter. Well, what do we do as dog handlers? Hey, we got to back out, and we got to wait.
You should.
Yeah, you should. You should. Well, from a drone operator perspective that doesn't know how to do that or doesn't know proper wait times, they put that bird up in the air and they go search, and then they come up to a live deer. Then what?
And it's really, really advantageous in a state that you're not allowed to go after the live deer.
Right. So that's why I started putting this together. And Ralph didn't even know I was putting this together till I had it pretty much finished. And I was very, very quiet about it, but it started stewing on me because you look at some of these states, once that deer is identified as live, you can no longer legally pursue that deer. Well, if you have a technician, because I don't consider them a deer recovery specialist because they know how to operate a joystick. If you have someone that just doesn't know, and I'm not saying they're doing it intentionally, they just don't know, and they go out there and they fly that drone and that deer is alive, and they say, oh, there's your deer, it's alive, and they leave that deer to rot in the woods, where most dog and handler teams is not going to leave that deer in the woods. Because most of us we're going to wait the proper wait times. We're going to make the right decisions. We're going to go analyze that sign. And I think that needs to be transitioned and carried over into the drone world. Right. So that's why I started working on that.
Case in point, our drone helper, I guess I'll call him, he don't hunt. But he can fly that drone like no tomorrow. And he's been with us enough. You've heard me interview, what my interview is like, Kenny. We do a thorough, AJ and myself do a thorough interview.
Right.
So we're kind of, he's gaining experience to where I've got like 5 tracks, just go run the drone. Well, we've already talked to the guy. the client so we can send him out. But, he's at the point now where, I'm feeling more comfortable where we could send him. But before it was like with AJ and I, who's going with him? Someone's got to go with him. You pair a dog guy into a drone guy, you're getting the best of everything, someone
Oh yeah.
the dog experience and then they go and learn that. I mean, that's invaluable.
Yeah, and like I said, that was my reason of organizing this, and you and I have talked, and I feel like we got a pretty good foundation to the program, and that's few little tweaks I got to make, just finishing up the training guide, but I think that's going to take things to the next level as far as deer recovery with drones.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, you got well-known drone guys that, really don't know a lot about deer hunting, deer behavior,
right,
so on and so forth. I'll leave it at that.
Not to mention, how many times have you pulled up to a track and the hunters say it goes this way and deer actually went that way, and the drone guy, he don't know to figure, he doesn't know that that's a big aspect of these hit sites. And right. that's so what you were saying a minute ago with a dog and a drone, you can figure that stuff out pretty quick with a dog and then switch over if need be. But having both in your toolbox,
right? That's
can't hurt.
and Kenny knows this, and I'll say this. We did about searches last year. Probably found 20 deer, dead and alive. We had some dog tracks that, like, man, this deer has got to be here. It's got to be here. We just wasn't coming up with it. So, off the top of my head, on at least 3 occasions, we've ran the drone after the dog. Still never found the deer.
Right.
They can't tell you that one is better than the other. They both have their place. And
here's a question, or I shouldn't say a question. Here's a comment that I think we need to touch on. Mike says, my experience is a drone will spook deer flown overhead.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, I've seen more often no. But every once in a while, yeah. But then again, I mean, how high are you flying?
Exactly.
Is it day? Is it night? Do you got the light on it constantly? Are you taking a quick look? Most of them pay never mind. Some will see it or hear it, and then they'll go a little ways and take off. But by then, your mission is accomplished. But you should have identified the deer, if it's your target deer or not. But like you were saying, I think in a post, Kenny, I'll read the print off your T-shirt from 400 feet with the 200 zoom.
Right.
So you don't have to be right on top of them. You can do it and not disturb them at all.
Yeah, the cameras, especially on those Matrices, those M30s,
right?
That camera's unreal.
Oh yeah, it's crazy.
When you can zoom in on a blue jay from 400 feet in the air, and it's on a blown down tree on the ground, and you can identify it as a blue jay, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, actually, when we went the day before we did the cow search, we said that we were tied up. So this was a lost dog search in a cornfield, and we sent our drone helper out, and he's like, "Yeah, yesterday I found a bird. He was on a corn stalk." He goes, "It was a bluebird," so he could tell it was a bluebird. In the daytime, with the drone from, I don't know how high he was flying, but Occasionally, yes. Most of the time, no, not so much. Not so much.
Right. And there, I missed a lot of comments and questions further back, so we'll circle back to some of those because this was on the when we were talking about some of the interdigital stuff and training, and one thing I want to touch on. Let's see. Ernie Johns asked, would a deer that has been shot dead while kicking not put out the pheromones? I would think they will. So you have to understand the pheromones and how all of it works. And the most recent study that I've been able to find was about 5 years ago. And that's when they broke it down into the categories and subcategories of the pheromones. And what we thought for years about interdigital has changed with these recent studies. And what they found is, like, as a deer gets wounded, it's not a wounded deer scent. It's a health status. Just like we give off we give off a pheromone as our health declines. And that's how dogs can sense it. That's how they train these dogs. So if that deer doesn't have enough time for that health to decline, it may not be giving off the pheromone that we're looking for, if that makes sense. And it's just like I explained to everyone, when you look at National Geographic and you look at these big herds, and then the weak and the sick are pushed out of the herd. Well, how do they know? Because they're giving off that declining health status. So I don't know. No one knows how quickly it happens. Well, I see Corey said within milliseconds. No one knows. No one truly knows. But I know the most recent study. What's that?
I said, I think, like you said, it's a per deer thing. It could. You don't know where the bullet hit, where, what all is happening, that you would have to have two identical comparisons to determine some of that, because it can be one slight thing different, and it could put off extremely quick versus, how, at what level is that injury?
Yeah, it's how rapid that health is declining. And
so to me, it's hard to say, because like he's saying, yes, that could be for that deer that he experienced, but another deer, it might not put it off as quick, or it don't even put it off and it's dead.
Does it ever stop? Does that smell stop? Do you
Yeah, I can tell you.
I guarantee you it does.
Do people struggle? I know with us, do people struggle with a jumped liver shot? We do sometimes. I don't know why. Well,
it depends on how early on it was jumped. It is a little like if they go in there and they jump it fairly quick after a shot. You think about this. Now that these recent studies have came out with it being a declining health, if let's say they get down in 30 minutes, well, how long does it take a liver shot to die in your area?
We found them alive overnight.
Right. Mm-hmm. So that means it's taking that much longer for that health to decline to the point where that health status changes. So if you jump it up right away, guess what? Its health may not have declined enough to really, but I can tell you this, my dogs do know when it stops. Especially Dixie. My dog Dixie, Ralph has seen it firsthand. She's going to come back. She's going to jump up on me. She's going to jump up on everyone there. And then she's just going to say, I'm done.
But
the deer's going to make it.
My dog, I don't care. It could be the slightest thing, and she keeps progressing. I've had dogs with me, like my buddy Jason that tracks with me a lot. His dog is strict pheromone, and his dog will quit during a trail and come back, and mine will keep going, and we'll go, they just lost that pheromone scent right there or in that area. Mine will keep going, so it doesn't mean it kept going. His stopped is what triggered it. And we've seen that happen. We've changed tactics right in the middle of a track because now we think, all right, we're on a live deer now. His dog quit. Mine's keeping progressing. And not every time, but you see different things. And I think it has to do with the pheromone. And like mine, if it's bleeding, she's going. But she acts different with the pheromone, but she's not going to quit. And so we use him as an indicator a lot of times that, we're on a live deer now because his quit. And so it's different. So I think what you were saying, that in my experience, we definitely sometimes can tell that. And I think that's at that level or at that status where it's going to be okay.
Yep. Now we had another question come in. Says, Kenny, when you say put more training on that dog, do you think it must be formal human-laid training or taking a dog that been initially trained on blood and letting him work 50 to 100 real life tracks? I personally don't think any dog that was trained on just blood should be put out there for the general public. I think there needs to be more training than that before you start jeopardizing the chance of recovery of someone's deer that you don't know. And 50 to 100 it's a reasonable number.
I tell everybody, I get a lot of calls with selling the shoes and stuff. Year one, track for yourself, track for your buddies. Shoot every doe you see is what I told a guy that the other day. Get as much experience as you can. And I tell them my personal measuring stick for me is if my dog can't, I got one I won't turn out. I will not turn him out to the public just for that reason, Kenny. Someone shoots the buck of their dreams. I can't, I'm not confident in him. So I like to use 0 blood, 24 hours and about 1,000 yards.
Yep.
The dog can go the distance. Can they stay engaged?
Yeah, we don't let a dog go home if they won't do that in our training program, and we don't, honestly, even if it takes twice as long, and there's people probably chime in here and tell you, even if it takes twice as long as what we normally estimate, we're not going to let that dog go home unless the owner says, hey, I'm happy with where they're at. We want 24 hours at least a half mile with no blood.
Right.
And I think that should be most people's goal. And if don't get me wrong, we can do it. John and I can do it a lot quicker than the average person, but we're also dedicating more time to it. Typically we can have that in 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Right. That all the time. And there's always a like, what? Yeah, well, yeah. If you're doing it for the public, and especially if you're charging any kind of fee or compensation, you got to have a good product to turn out to them.
And I will say most of these state tracking groups, these state Facebook groups, are starting to transition to more of an apprenticeship mentorship program. I know Florida has it. Georgia, we're rolling that out this year. We're making quite a few changes in Georgia this year. We've been working with the PA group to help organize that same system there. And I know there's plenty of other states that do it. And that's a game changer. Well, that's where you can take a dog like this that, let's say, doesn't have a lot of formal training, and you can have that mentor, take you under their wing per se. And there are times where we just can't get to some of these tracks, and a dog like that's better than no dog, and an experienced handler can help work you through that, even if they're not there. I know I do it all the time. I have people from all over the U.S. call me every season. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think I should do here? What about this? Or my wife will tell you, I get 150, 200 text messages a day with pictures and scenarios. And, I'm sure you guys get the same. We help people all the time. So the best thing someone like that can do is get involved with one of these state groups, and you're going to get the help and get the experience. Even tracking for the general public, you're going to get it, but you're going to have more support from the network of trackers within that organization or group.
Yeah, my first year, I got my dog from Brad, and he really helped a lot. Almost after every track, whether it was a find or a non-find, I would call him and say, "What do you think about? What do you think?" And that's tremendously helps a lot.
Yeah,
And it gives them the confidence that they're not out there alone too.
Right. Yep. So we'll go down here. Glenn Martin, he chimed and said, "Sorry, been off and on. Might have missed the question. Are those drones running thermal cameras and or night vision if allowed?" Most of us have thermals.
You got to have a thermal. I mean, a recovery drone without a thermal is like taking a leash without a dog.
Yep.
you have to have the thermal. No, period.
Right. Yeah, and so Randy Vick said, "I had a tracker call and quiz me about drones yesterday, and today I had a real estate agent friend / tracking client call and quiz me about using his drones to recover deer. Good candidates for your class." And that's the thing. We want further education. Vicky Church will tell you, we've had a lot of conversations about drones, and Vicky is not a big fan of drone usage. But like I told her, I said, "What's that?"
She's coming around.
Yeah. Well, and I think the biggest problem is, and I believe all of you will agree, when drone deer recovery first came out, they were hammering on dogs. And that's where a lot of this came from. "Oh, call us. We don't run your game off. We don't put down a bunch of scent of dogs. We're not out there just chasing around any deer that comes across." There was all kinds of stuff out there, and it was good marketing. I'll give them that. Was it truthful? No. But I also see a lot of dog people that doesn't fully understand the drones doing the same thing, and
Right.
I used, in one of my comments on that post you were talking about, Darren, I used the analogy of how many hammers do you have in your toolbox? You got a rubber mallet, you got a sledgehammer, a claw hammer, ball peen hammer. That came from Vicky Church. She said, you got to have the right hammer for the job. So Richard asked another question. He said, "Are you able to identify and analyze wound beds with the drone?" Obviously not.
No, you can. I mean, no. On what the deer you're after, no. But, and I have a video on this, you can, sometimes the drone will pick up a deer bed. I can't tell if it's, because when you're with the drone, you're basically doing an aerial grid search with the drone to a degree, right? You're going back and forth, looking for the deer, the heat source. And I got a video. I wasn't there, but they come upon this deer, and it's laying there. And this deer does spook from the drone. It gets up, and you can see that bed clear as day from 400 feet at night. But it's just a deer laying there. You can't analyze. You don't. Right. Exactly. So no is the answer. You cannot.
No, and like we said earlier, and even you, Darren, as an experienced tracker, you even said, "Well, I don't check the hit site or shot site when I'm taking the drone."
Right.
We do everything probably but that. And I guess, no, I cannot argue with you, Kenny. That's an excellent point, and we probably should do it. Now,
We do our thorough interview as normal. If they got the arrow, we'll look at the arrow. And then do we go and look at the hit site with the drone? No. Should we? Probably, yeah. I guess because of setting everything up and time and whatever, maybe a little overconfident. I don't know. But no, we don't. Should we? Yes.
But honestly, Darren, you're not the only. Every single person I mentioned that to that's a drone operator says, no, we don't do that. But as soon as I start explaining the reasons why, they're all like, yeah, we should. We really should.
Right.
and I've spoken to some drone operators that have zero tracking experience, zero hunting experience. And they're like, well, I wouldn't even know what to look at or look for, and that goes back to, a good dog handler with the drone and a dog. That's deadly.
Yes, for sure.
So now we're kind of bouncing around the way the conversation went. Perry Lawrence says, what about intestine shot? Does that gland kind of go away and come back when they start going downhill? We tracked on one for a couple of days last year. So I think most of you will agree with this. Intestinal shot deer can be some of the toughest to track. I know I've experienced it over the years that it can be hard to keep that dog going, or that dog to really lock in and want to go, especially certain dogs. And I've always said from the beginning, I feel like it's not giving off that pheromone. Well, this last study kind of shows that if it's a declining health, how fast is their health declining intestinally shot? You got to wait for infection to set in, and that can take a long time. I know Randy Vick and I, we've went behind deer 4 days that are intestinal shot still alive, and I've recovered one at 4 days after it was shot. Just kept putting on it every day. So that's a good example. And I know Ralph's talked about this. That's a good example right there of that declining health. But can the dogs take it? Sure. If you have a dog that isn't like dead focused on the pheromones being there, like he talked about Bear, that's going to be one where Bear just may not even take it. Where Ralph takes Camo and she's going to hone in on that broken vegetation, disturbed earth, and dander, and she's gonna go.
But we actually did it the opposite. Camo didn't take it, and Bear did take it one day, and we were like sitting around going, man, because they told us it was a gut shot, and we were sitting there, and the dogs were having a hard time, but his dog was slow and methodical enough that he worked it out. And I said, man, we were standing in the knee deep in the middle of a swamp, and I said, this just ain't acting like a gut shot. And the girl said, well, I got a video. Sure enough, she popped that video out, and there it was, just as intestinal shot, just as sure as it was. And that's why I always talk to my friends around here. If it doesn't act like a gut shot, there's a good chance it's intestine. And I've went behind. That's why I'm a big proponent of not just looking at an arrow, smell the arrow. And that changes everything to me as far as knowing, not being down on your dog because it's not trailing a gut shot. It's a good chance it's not a gut shot. And if you identify it, you expect different things out of your dog. And so it makes a world of difference in your confidence level, because that's all we got out there is that confidence of trusting your dog. Well, I trust my dog that if it's having a hard time, it's not gut shotted, period. It just isn't going to be. And there's a ton of people that they look at an arrow, or they never even smell the arrow or look at the arrow. Or they'll look at it but never smell it. I've had so many people tell me it's a gut shot and it's intestine shot by smelling the arrow, or a lot of times it doesn't have a smell, which tells you it's not gut shot. and we'll, wet it a little bit and boom, there it is. It's intestinal shot. And
Yeah, Ralph, Vicky said you have to lick it.
Nah.
Pass.
She's talking about the arrow.
Yeah. I have told some of the apprentices, I shouldn't say it, but I have told them to lick it when I've been on the phone. I haven't got one to do it yet.
I bet you get Jason Bell to do it.
I don't know. He don't trust me much anymore. But it dang makes a difference because, like I said, as soon as you know what it is, it just changes everything. You might not expect certain things, and that out there in the field, when that hunter knows you're confident, man, that puts a whole different outlook on things, because now you can tell them what they might be up against, and it changes. Oh
yeah. So, like I said, we're bouncing back and forth here because we're all over on topics. But Mike Payton said, "I would prefer to go behind a drone that grid search than all of camp and his buddies' hog dogs." 100%.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. All right. How long before the deer does not produce body temp after seizing, and you cannot pick it up on thermal? 8 to 12 hours or longer? Just curious. Much longer.
Much longer. We have videos on this. And if you guys wanted an honest assessment, an honest video with no fluff or BS, deer, dogs, and drones, look at some of our videos. We have one 33 hours post-shot that we found in a swamp. Now, that one's kind of unique. The dog was on it. He had called the dog early, a friend of ours, part of our team. He was tracking right to it. We have to track on lead. Water got too deep, and he just couldn't go any farther. We found it. So 24 hours, no problem.
What are you calling deep?
Like wow. I wasn't there, so I'm assuming chest deep, maybe. I don't know. Or where the dog had to swim on lead, I guess. I don't know.
I'm just asking because we already know we can't trust your heat definition.
I
don't know. He
had his hiking boots on. But no, that one was 33 hours post shot. I can only assume it was stone cold dead when we found it, and it had been dead for, I don't know, several hours. I would only assume. I can't say it was dead for 33, 24. I don't know, but I'm confident in 24 hours. We found one. I got a video of one we found in a pond, partially submerged. It's pretty cool because its rack is submerged and we can see the rack under the water. Now, Ralph, that wasn't that deep. But the guy actually used a paddle boat, one of those residential paddle boats, I'll call them, to go out and get it and drag it back in. Now, I know that deer was laying in that water for at least 8 hours in that cold, in December here. So it was pretty cool out, and still putting off enough heat. The part exposed that we found. I mean, as soon as we got in the air, we found that thing in 2 minutes flat. So 24 hours, I'm fine with that. I think we'll find it. I think we'll find it, especially if there's no foliage. If there's no foliage, and we're in, getting into late season, we'll find every squirrel in the woods. I'm telling you, it's. To watch the videos is one thing. It's just different when you're there live watching the drone work and watching the screen.
It's amazing.
It's just different. It's just different. The stuff you see, I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, 12 hours. Yeah, I'm coming. Oh, that's like tonight. You shoot one tonight. If I get there tomorrow, I'm fine with getting there tomorrow night at dark. in season when the conditions are right. If they want the drone, I'm fine with that. And if it's laying there dead, we'll find it. Should find it.
So Vicky commented here, and I know she had some conversations with Yoder, which is the founder of the Deer Drone Recovery. Said, according to Yoder, infection will create heat many days later. And I can't remember how old it was that he said that he found one, but it was like a ridiculous number.
Yeah, once we start getting, because we did find the one 33 hours post shot, and I think that was a November buck, so it was cool. And water, gone through water. I think it was laying on ground and out in the swamp, but 24 hours, we'll give it a crack. No problem. Once it starts getting up, now if you're talking 30 plus, then we're a little more apprehensive, because the name of the game is finding your deer, not just running the drone to make you happy.
Well, Vicky just chimed in and said that one by Mr. Yoder was 72 hours.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
I'd have to see that video.
Yeah.
Pop that one on Glenn Martin up, if you would, and let me. I'd like to answer that one. It's
Yep. I was getting to that one right there.
If in my experience, if it's gut, it's going to have that rank smell to it, and you can't hardly keep it up to your nose. If it doesn't smell or smells like crap, that is a dead giveaway. Most of the arrows I smell, I say it's intestines when it doesn't smell. They don't smell a lot, hardly at all to me. To where the gut, I can't even hardly keep it up to your nose. It's like putting a salt, up to your nose, alcohol or something like that, to where you just can't keep your nose on it. And even if I've had people wipe it off, it still will smell if it's gut. And so that's, and to me, it's just, like I said before, that's a dead giveaway to me. I start expecting different things out of my dog, because it's tough. And like an intestine, if I had to bet, it's going to be alive.
Right. And that brings up the comment from Corey. Corey Griner says, I agree with that. He's talking to me here. He called me on one last year. They jumped the deer 24 hours later, and it was advised by me and Lyle to go back the next day. Yep. And then Dean says, I feel like intestinal shots are tougher during the rut, but not as much beforehand. I feel like the rut is the determining factor. And I can agree with that. The bulk of our tracks are during the rut. And here,
I think everything changes during the rut like that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's
a deer that's not rutting, he's gonna go lay down, to where he ain't gonna do that during the rut. He's gonna go hard as he can.
Yep.
It don't stop. It don't phase him, it seems like.
No. Well, they're gonna push through it because they got something else on their mind.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm hurt, I'm gonna go over here and lay down, and just so it quits hitting.
November 5th. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and then Dean says he finds that bear are much easier to track scent wise than deer. Yeah, for one, you have a ton more hide or hair, but not just that. The pheromones are released through the pedal gland, which is in the pad of the paw, and it's huge, and the orifices for that gland are huge in that pad, so that makes even more so. But them things stink.
I wouldn't know because mine comes back like a scared kid.
So Brent Dale asked, "Has anyone ever used the gut wipes?" I had never seen them until we were in Pennsylvania and Joe Tenney showed them to us. Ethan and Darren, have y'all seen them?
We
I
had
know of them. I've never used them though.
we had a guy on our team last year use them. I've never used them. I don't know what the outcome was. I think he used it one time, and it did have a positive reaction for gut material. Yeah, so that's my extent with them. But I have heard of them.
Called gut check or something.
Yep, gut check. That's Brian just asked the same thing. Anyone use gut check? Yeah, so it looks like we're getting caught up
Good.
on the questions, but
Go to that one from Emily, if you don't mind.
oh yeah, I missed that one. What approach do you take on an intestine shot versus a gut shot?
If you don't mind, I'll answer. Then you can
Go ahead.
You
Go ahead.
answer you. I don't have a different approach. I just have a different concept of what's fixing to happen. If I know it's intestine, I don't like a gut shot. 100%, I'll find every gut shot that's out there if we give it proper wait times. But even at that, I can tell from the way the dog's acting. So it's just my expectations of what we're fixing to get into is what I change, so that I'm not expecting it to be a gut shot and it turn out to be an intestine and I've gotten aggravated or I can't figure things out. If you know that quicker, you just know what's fixing to happen. No different than if you find bone, it's a big percentage, it's going to be a leg shot. So you have expectations of what you're fixing to get into. That's all it is. I don't do something different. I just have different expectations.
Yeah, and I have to agree there. If I do something different, it would be honestly that one's going to go on the back burner as long as I can let it sit there.
Oh, absolutely.
And take other tracks way ahead of that because there's no sense of urgency. And I explained that to the hunters. I'm like, if it was gut and we knew it was gut, it'd be a different scenario because then you are talking about a quicker risk of spoilage. But when it's intestinal, that's going on the back burner. I'll get to you when I get all these other ones done. That would be the difference in my approach. Yeah. And speaking of intestinal versus gut shot and how the dogs react, that's another win for the dogs over the drone side of things because the drone's not going to be able to tell that difference. I'm not sure that the outcome would be any different, but those are things that obviously a dog can tell us that a machine can't.
But that's also either one, that part of checking out a hit site. I've pulled up and see, they thought it was gut matter, but it actually is intestinal matter, to where a drone might, even a dog, you might back out or might do something different, just to give it more time.
We treat them the same, whether
Right.
it's drone, it starts with the interview. And if we think it's a gut, well, you got to wait. If they want the drone, even if they want you got to wait, man. That's what gets people in trouble. They don't wait. They can't.
But that's your experience as a dog guy transferring over to a drone where your typical drone operator who doesn't have that experience will not know that.
Right. That's right.
I've went to tracks and pulled off because I've had either intestine or gut. Just pull off knowing I'm here way too quick. The percentages are so low, it's not even worth it. So,
right. Well, we've been on here nearly 2 hours. This was This was a good one. You know, we covered a lot of stuff. I think we answered a lot of questions and hit on some hot topics. And, you know,
Good to meet you, Ethan.
Yes, sir. Good to be on here.
yeah, we're glad to have both of y'all on here. I really
Yep.
appreciate it. It's, as you can see, it adds a whole different outlook on things and different topics. And, you know, Mike says most hunters don't know what it means if the deer is intestinal shot, and that's true. And you know, that's why, you know, right now, you know, we've been traveling, educating the trackers, and you know, I've had someone ask me, well, what are you guys doing about educating the hunters? I'll tell you how we're educating the hunters. We're educating the trackers. You educate the trackers. The trackers is your front line that's going to be out there educating the hunters.
Your trackers are your subject matter experts, right?
Yep.
Or if you don't, you're a subject matter expert, then you got some homework to do, right?
Yep.
They rely on you heavily. If they can cry and moan, and it's every year. Oh, you can't come out till tomorrow. What do you think? I'm telling you what happened. And you should be right the majority of the time. You're the subject matter expert. They rely heavily on you.
Oh yeah.
And again, that's why I say these Facebook groups are so beneficial to not only the trackers, you know, especially the new trackers, to have the opportunity to reach out to some of these more veteran teams, but it's also such a huge asset for the hunting community. You know, these apps are great. You know, there's a place for the apps, but what the apps don't give you is that conversation, that education that these interactive Facebook groups do. And that's why it's important. They're, again, just like the dogs versus drone, it's another tool. Well, no app will reach that hunting community at the level of an interactive Facebook group. You know,
yeah, I don't know how many times, you know, you call somebody and they're like, well, I'll think about it. Or if you're talking to somebody about, you know, shot placement, hit wound sites, whatever, like, if I ever need, I'm calling you, you know.
right.
And another one, those guys that just go off, or the hunters that just go off of time, they don't realize in the busy weekend, they just dropped by hesitating or calling somebody, and then they call you back and you just drop 3 or 4 down the list because it gets busy. And so if they just trust you and get in line, that's a key, but they won't do it. You know, there's so many that they just got to have you out there now. And luckily we get enough track. It's getting down to now that I just ain't going. It's just no sense in it.
And that brings up another point, because we may have some people watching that's not trackers and they are hunters and they're on here wanting to learn something. If there's one piece of advice I can give you, is get to know your trackers, and, you know, just ask around. The people will tell you the quality trackers out there. But one thing I want to say, in the game of deer recovery or any game recovery, time is on your side. If you have a tracker like Ralph, Ethan, Darren, myself say, hey, we need to wait 8 hours, and you have someone else that says, hey, I'll be there in an hour, that should send up some red flags. Or if you call 3 or 4 trackers, they all say, hey, I think we need to wait 6, 8, 12, 24 hours. And then you have this one person says, oh, I can come on my way now. You better just hang up the phone and not talk to them anymore, and just delete that phone number.
Or
Yeah. Because waiting 8 hours, that's hard to do, because I want to go track some deer.
Yeah.
Or you get the call and they say, well, that's what the other guy said. Well, duh.
But, and your success rate goes sky high compared. If you just, wait times to me are that's probably the biggest attribute that needs to happen over anything, is the wait times. That we got little dog, we can't catch anything, you know, per se. So wait times are crucial. And It just, you gotta, there's a lot more strategy sometimes, but it is what it is.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
got
and
a
one
post
last
in
piece
the
of advice before we got to go. Crap, I just drew a blank on it.
Ethan was wanting to say something. While
Yeah,
you're
go
thinking.
ahead, Ethan. I'll think
Well,
of
I
it
was
in
gonna
just a second.
say I'm in the Arkansas Blood Trail Network, and we had one of the other admins make a post about just wait to go look at your shot site. Just wait, it's fine, it's fine. And there was some pushback about coyotes, eating your deer, and we kind of got in our private page, and we are like, hey, how many of y'all have tracked up to a deer that's been eaten by coyotes? And it was negligent. I mean, or tiny amount of even some multi-day weights that actually had been on coyotes.
Yeah,
But one
very
of the
low
common
percentage.
yeah, and one of the things I brought up was like, we snare coyotes out here, and I go snare pretty hard with a guy here. And one of the things that I suspect is that like probably the earlier you get on a deer, the more likelihood you're going to push it and create a longer line of scent for a coyote to strike up a deer. So kind of summation is like the earlier you wait, probably the higher likelihood of your deer getting eaten by coyotes, or the earlier you get after your deer, you probably increase the chances of getting coyotes finding him.
So I remember what I was going to say. One thing that I do now that I haven't done as much years in the past, one of the first things I ask the hunters is, have you been in contact with another tracker? That is one of the very first things that I ask. And every tracker out there that's listening to this, if you don't ask that question, I advise you to start doing that, because that right there creates more problems within the hunting and tracking community than anything else. I would say even more so than the people that just tries to take tracks out from under you. If you just ask that one question, you will gain a lot of respect from other trackers, because you could pick up the phone and say, hey, this person just called me. They said they talked to you. What's the deal? You'll learn so much. And that's another key part.
How many times every year between me and AJ, he'll talk to somebody or I'll talk to somebody, and we'll tell them what they don't want to hear. Quickly, we call each other and say, Joe's calling you. I already in tune that, he'll tell them the same thing. Or, we talk to each other. We're in constant communication throughout the season daily. But we give each other a heads up. I told him this. He didn't seem happy. I think he's going to call you. And within 5 minutes, the guy calls him and he says, well, what'd Darren tell you? That's what I'm telling you too. We're in sync. We're so much in sync that it's not funny.
Yeah. Well, we could go on and on about this all night, but I do want to touch on this one right here before we go. Kyle says, we have a lot of coyotes here close to Athens. We still wait the appropriate times, but had 3 last year eaten that late overnight. And that may seem like a lot to some, but I don't know his situation, but I can tell you I may see 3 to 5 a year eaten by coyotes or hogs. But that's 1%.
Yep.
1% of the tracks I go on. So keep that in the back of your mind too. So, and another one.
If you went quicker though, you wouldn't find near as many gut shots either.
That's right.
Many fast ones. You just wouldn't.
Right. I mean, I had one last year, and I advised them to wait. I mean, it was clearly a gut shot deer, and we still went in a little earlier than I wanted, but my dogs were trailing, headed towards the edge of the swamp, not far from the shot site, and I look up and there was 8 hogs. And I'm like, what in the world? This dog has never trashed on a hog, and I was getting mad. And I'm like, what in the world? So I restarted her. I tried to push her in a different direction. And about that time, the hunter says, get back, get back. He's hollering, pushing the hogs off. The hogs were on the deer. So my dog was right, and I was being frustrated. I didn't walk up, but, it happens. one thing I want to touch on real quick too is because a lot of people doesn't realize this, we deal with extreme heat here in Florida, especially when season opens next weekend on private land, or actually, yeah, this coming weekend on private land in South Florida, and it'd be in the mid to upper 90s. But like Mike says right here, deer usually don't spoil in 8 hours time in 90-degree heat in South Florida. I'll read that again. They usually don't spoil in 8 hours time in 90-degree heat in South Florida. We see it every year. You could let them lay overnight in 90-degree temperatures and the meat's fine. So many people think, I don't want the meat to spoil. I don't want the meat to spoil. You go up north and most hunters, they want to go, field dress it. You come down here and they'll throw the deer up on the dog box, not gutted, ride around all day long running races, and then go home that evening and clean it. It's 80, 90 degrees out. So
Yeah, I've never found a spoiled deer.
Yeah.
You haven't?
No.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never been on like 2 days after dead or anything, but plenty in bow season and early muzzleloading when it's 80 plus and left out all night, and they're always fine.
Right.
I don't know that I've ever found one during using normal proper wait times. I don't think I've ever found one. It's always been somebody didn't hear about our network and called us, day and a half, 2 days later, and obviously the deer's spoiled by them, but it wasn't because of our wait times.
Sure.
Right. All right, guys. Well, we're at 2 hours here, so again, appreciate everyone for coming on and everyone for participating and with the questions and comments. And next week, I spoke with Shane Simpson with the Tracker app. He is planning to join us next week. So again, thank you, and we will talk to all of y'all soon.
See everybody next week.
Bye.
See y'all.